What's up, Soul Warriors? Welcome to Winning Wednesday Live with LC and you. Today we're going to talk about an amazing topic. It doesn't sound very motivating, but hopefully as we get through this video and there towards the end, we can leave you inspired, informed, and motivated. I want to ask you this question. How is shame blocking or hindering your healing process? And how do we overcome shame? Shame is the epidemic in this country. In fact, I believe it's the pandemic. I believe that it is actually the ingredient that grows every addiction we have on earth. And so that's what I want to talk about in today's video. I want to talk about shame. I want to talk about how we overcome shame. And I just want to talk about how truly amazing you are. So if you can, let's go ahead and share this video out. And if you happen to be watching this later on the replay, let me just say thank you for allowing myself and Recovery Soulfood to be a part of your amazing healing and recovery journey. I don't take that lightly. It is absolutely an amazing opportunity that I get to come and share my experience with you, the strength that I've found, the techniques that I've used, and the hope that I spark every single day within my own self. Because here's what I know. After 22 years of active hellish addiction, if I can celebrate 8 years on the 18th of this month and be a completely new human being and live a life that I truly love and really look forward to getting up and living every single day, then I promise you can as well. So if you guys are absolutely ready to get this Winning Wednesday started, then I am ready. So let's go. Winning Wednesday, live with LC and you, and today we are talking about an amazing topic, shame. Shame in which we all have some of. So I don't care if you have ever experienced active addiction or if you have never experienced any of that. We all carry a bit of shame, and sometimes we actually define it as guilt. But what we're going to learn here this morning is that guilt and shame are much different. You see, guilt, Brene Brown says that guilt is behavior and shame is very personal. Guilt is I made a mistake. Shame is I am a mistake. Now, let's put this into terms of addiction, because addiction needs one major thing to grow in epidemic proportions, and that is shame. So shame needs a few things to grow, and that is isolation. It needs secrecy. It needs avoidance. It needs hiding. And let me tell you, that's the same thing that addiction needs to grow. Now, whether you came into addiction to cover your feelings of shame, or whether you happened into addiction without knowing that, because this whole opioid epidemic, many people found themselves in the midst of an opioid addiction without even realizing that that was even a possibility, or that, all of us, they wake up and they don't have that medicine, and now they realize they're addicted. And guess what starts happening then? Shame. I got addicted. What's wrong with me? And we often use shame when we are dealing with a loved one in active addiction. Not because we just want to be rude and cruel And let's just say there are some folks out there that don't understand addiction in any way, shape, or form, and cruelty is what they, hope to do. Somehow we think we can shame people into being better. We think we can shame people into just dropping addiction. And I wish it worked that way. I really, really wish that we could just wake up one morning and say, I don't want to be addicted anymore, and just drop it. But unfortunately, it doesn't work like that. And what we have to understand is that at the core of this whole addiction and recovery process, because shame follows you into recovery. Shame follows you into recovery because how many of us have we have we have changed those behaviors, right? So we've come out of those behaviors, we've changed our lives, but there is this sneaky little bit of shame that follows us through. And it is that shame that tells us every time we want to do something new, every time we want to step into something, shame is the one that is talking to you. Shame tells you you can't. Shame tells you you've made too many mistakes. Shame tells you you have a record. Don't even go in and apply for that job. Shame tells you to go sit down somewhere. Who do you think you are? You've done all these, awful, awful things, even though we've changed the behavior. And guess what relapse needs to live? It needs shame. Because we get a little bit of clean time. All of a sudden we find an area that needs healing and is coming up in us because it needs healing. And we go back to what we know. It's too much for us to deal with, cope with. And we have that relapse. And guess what comes in? Here comes shame. I told you you couldn't do this. Why are you even trying? You might as well just give it up and go on through this. Nobody's ever going to trust you anymore. Nobody's ever going to understand this. Nobody understands you. Just stay where you are, and shame will keep you living small. So before I go any further, let me say some good mornings because there are some amazing people on this feed with us. And I realize that this internet may come in and out, and I apologize for that already. It's been acting weird. So good morning, Mary Huffman, Larry Brown, Angel McBride, good morning, Alicia Lee, Brian Savoya, good morning, and my good friend and brother, Joe Potosi. If you're here and I haven't called you out or said good morning, please, good morning. I love you, Larry Brown. Love you, Larry Brown. Be safe today. Change lives today. Larry, you are standing in the place to absolutely do that. Oh, I love you, man. It's still so hard for me, y'all, not to see Yvonne in this feed, and I am really working through that and moving through that. And I'll tell you, shame has even come into my grieving process with my friend. It is amazing how many times a day shame will present itself in our lives, and yet we don't know what it is. And yet we don't know what it is. We don't know what we're looking at. And that's how we begin to overcome shame, is we begin to walk into our shame. Yeah, we got to walk into our shame. Now, look, we're not supposed to live there. We know what happens when we live in shame. We relapse, we stay small, we get sick. We get physically sick. But whenever we start to become aware, and that's why I call this an awakened recovery channel, awakened in the fact that we've got to awaken to ourselves. We've got to get to know ourselves and awaken to all of our possibilities. We also have to awaken to all of those little pesky things that are holding us back from living our entire truth. And what your truth is to you is not this one thing that you get to write above, in neon lights above you, and it leads you as you walk through. Your truth is that you are working towards becoming a healed and whole individual. And whatever purpose that you move throughout and give to the world with your experience, that's different than your truth. Your truth is you have to learn to be you. As my good friend Kareth Foster says, you have to learn to be yourself in a world that wants you to be something and someone else all of the time. If you're heavy, the world wants you to be skinny. If you're skinny, the world says you're anorexic. If you're ever just you, everything that you look outside of you at is telling you to be something and someone else. And what your truth is learning to love you. Now, see, this is very important to me because so much of my active addiction was spent in the shame of not being acceptant of how I was made, who I am, what I was put here for. And I ran from that. And I tried to cover up the shame in that because, like I said in the very beginning, shame is the epidemic in this world. We shame people to get them to do better. We shame people when we don't think they're doing enough. We shame people when they're doing everything that they could do. And, I love the topic of shame because shame is what has hindered me for so long. And I'm still finding little evidences, little crumbs of shame left over in my life. And when you're trying to really live in your truth, that's where shame shows up. And it loves to hide around little corners in your life, especially in the lives of women. Let's just say it. Men have shame too, and I want you to know men are full of shame as well. Their shame, though, comes in very different variables. It comes in do not appear to be weak. That's why so many men don't often reach out for help because they don't want to appear weak. That's what I love. The beauty of recovery teaches everyone, man and woman, whatever your gender identity is, matters not. The one thing that we all know we have to do is reach out when we are feeling weak. And that's another reason I believe that recovery in this community can change the world, because our whole work in recovery and healing is to eradicate shame. That's what makes our disease grow so rapidly, is the shame. But we have these underlying subconscious expectations of women, and women expect those same things of themselves because they are expected to do everything and never complain. When it came, way back many years ago, and I would guess it would be World War II, when women had to jump into the workforce, there was never any type of provision made for them to go to work and help with, someone else help with the kids. They were going to work, and now they were still expected to do the home, the children, and all of this stuff. And women started realizing their power, but at the same time there was loads of shame that went with that, because if you went to work to feed these children, you were being shamed because you weren't with these children enough. And so we can see how shame has been growing in our lives for generations and generations and generations. And so I believe what this addiction epidemic has done is throw a light switch on the epidemic of shame. So when I tell each and every one of you in this fight, whether you've been in this battle 1 day, 1 minute, a year, or 100 years, it doesn't matter how long you've been here. You are a vital part of a world-changing epidemic, and that is recovery, because we deal in nothing but shame. We deal in the only way to fully heal from this disease of addiction is to fully eradicate shame out of our lives. And to do that, we have to first go look at it in its face. When shame starts talking to you today, and it will at some point, I want you to make the intention this morning that when you turn this video off, that you are going to be on the lookout for shame in your life. Men, women, I don't care what your gender, age, or sobriety level is. I want you to be on the lookout for shame in your life today. And remember, shame is that little voice that tells you you can't. Shame is that little voice that tells you not to trust your intuition, your still small voice. Shame is that little voice that tells you you're not good enough to have that, so don't even bother dreaming it. Recognize the voice of shame in your life. Learn to separate guilt and shame. So remember, guilt has to do with behavior. Guilt is, I made a mistake. Shame is, I am a mistake. Even when you get into a point where you wrong someone today, or you snap at your kids, or you snap at your spouse, whichever way, you snap at somebody on the job, and you apologize for that, see if shame doesn't bring the tail end up from that. Make sure that you leave that apology right there with that behavior, and don't let shame tag along with you as you leave the room. And I'll tell you, shame is the person that says, I shouldn't have done that. I thought you were better than that. You said you've been working on these things, but I guess you haven't been working on them at all. I guess you haven't been working on them. Learn to recognize shame and how shame speaks to you in your life. Turn around and flip the light on that shame. Don't let it sit in the darkness, in those dark spaces of your life. Don't let it sit in the shadows, hence the word shadow work. Don't let it sit and hide in the shadows of your life. Learn to recognize it. Become aware. Become aware that you've got shame in you, or you wouldn't even be on this video. You just wouldn't. All of us have a bit of shame in our lives. So don't let shame tell you it doesn't exist for you. The only way we actively eradicate shame is to actively eradicate it. And the only way to do that is to become aware of it, right? So be aware today. That's like the second little tip is beat it by acknowledging it. Shame don't want you to see it. And it dang sure don't want you to call it out, because then it can't hide. The game is over when you are able to see it. Beat it at its own game. Turn on the light, beat it at its own game. And you've got to empathize it. Now, I know this is cliche, but I'm going to say it because it works. If you were sitting with someone you love, friend, one of your children that came home from school and had been shamed, because please believe me that shame starts early. Our whole school system is built upon shame. If you're not in the class that gets the A's, you're an underachiever. If you don't understand something, don't raise your hand because people might call you a dummy. If you are getting D's, you're failing. And sometimes the teacher can't even take time with you, especially if you've gotten D after D after D. Sometimes they're just too overwhelmed to even take time with you. Shame starts growing very, very early. So be aware of this. And if you are sitting with one of your children and they came home and they were telling you about an episode of shame, how would you react? How would you try to nurture them? How would you try to eradicate that shame from their lives? What would you tell them? Because this is what you've got to do with your own shame. This is what you have to do for yourself. I don't care how old you are, and I really don't care how crazy it sounds. It's going to sound crazy because shame wants you to think it sounds crazy. Shame wants you to feel like a pure fool doing it, because then it gets to live. If it can tell you how idiotic the eradication process is, then it can live within you even longer. So we're eradicating shame in our recovery process because in order for us to reach that place of living that happy, healthy, whole life, we've got to eradicate this. And then we've got to know and understand how it gets in, how it grows, and how from here on out we can decipher between guilt and shame and what we can do about it. So empathy is the antidote to shame. So take that time within you to treat yourself as if you are one of your children going through an episode of shaming. All right? Be aware when you are shaming others. It sounds terrible, and again, shame can live here too, because a lot of times we reproduce what we have experienced in our lives. No matter how many times when we're young, we say, well, I'll never raise my kids like this. I'll let my kids eat chocolate cake and everything for breakfast. That's a joke, but it's very serious business because I went through this with my own son. There were so many ways that I knew that I would not raise him when I was younger. And then yet when we're in the middle of it, I was so desperate I didn't have any other skills. And there were many times where I shamed him. I shamed my wife. I love you, Brian. Oh, man, go take care of her. I'm so sorry, man. Brian, we love you. We love you. We love you, man. We're just surrounding you in healing energy. Good morning, Andrea. Good morning, Brandy. Good morning, Tevi P. I love you. But we do that to, our children or people in our lives. When my wife was in the midst of her relapse, I was so desperate to, have it stop because I was afraid. Here's the honest truth. I was afraid of the end result. What if I lost her to this? And I tried everything. I tried begging. All of the things that I knew, all the tools that I had, which were only tools from active addiction. I tried with her. And I even tried the shaming because that's what we do when we don't really understand where someone else is, even if we've gone through it. It's still sometimes hard to be on that other side and we shame. So we've got to be aware where we are shaming others and not be afraid to clean it up when we become aware of it. Now understand, you're not going to be 100% aware and a master at identifying shame just after this one video and after this one day. You're going to have to practice becoming aware of it. And it's going to be like a game of hide and seek that you're going to have to do over and over each day and be intentional of doing that, because we've got to start catching these things before they marinate down into our soul. You see, things start here. And if we don't become aware of them here and go ahead and get them out here, they just simply keep going. And as they go, they spiral down until they're so subconscious. You are just living your life from a place of shame and you don't even realize it. And we deserve to live that whole happy life. And when I say that, I want you to acknowledge your body and how that one statement makes you feel. Do you immediately go to a place where you kind of feel uneasy inside and you think, well, not me, Elsie. You don't know what I've done. I've done way too much. I've hurt way too many people. I've lost my children. Somebody else is raising my children. My wife won't let me see my kids. I've done too much. I've created too much damage. There it is. There it is. And you can learn right now in that moment how to start recognizing shame. It's a very personal thing within you. And though we all have, like addiction, we all have some of the same symptoms and the way it all acts, but the voice of it is very personal to us, and many times it sounds like your own voice. So we have to be willing to come back, clean that stuff up, even if it happened 20 years ago. My son is grown now, but I don't ever miss an opportunity to let him know, when something has come to my awareness, or I see something happening in his life that I know and can recognize was created in his time of growing up, while I was in my healing periods as well, making great mistakes with him. When I see that, I don't hesitate to clean it up in that moment. Maybe tell him, why maybe he's feeling that way, and how things are different. There's a way to do it without shaming yourself. And yet, when I do feel shame, I try to clean that up. See, we're going to make mistakes. We are human. It is in our DNA to make mistakes. And we're not going to catch shame every time it jumps the threshold of our experience. But we can seek it out and see where it is at play in our lives, where it is hindering and blocking our progress. Because some of those places you feel stuck is shame not allowing you to see it or the answer on the other side. And we've got to learn how to stop reacting, move back, and recognize those places in our life. So, this is our job for the day. Become aware of shame. Get aware of what shame sounds like in your life. Start turning a light on where shame is at an active subconscious place, how it's moving your actions. Thank you, Andrea. Yeah, I'm doing every Wednesday morning now, 8 a.m. I'm doing Wednesday mornings and Saturday nights at 8 p.m. And that's all I can do right now. And guys, that was a huge bit of shame for me when I had to back down from doing daily videos. It was a huge, huge, huge bit of shame for me because I felt like I was abandoning people. It was hard for me to pick which day that I was going to do it because, I can't please everyone no matter how much I wanted to, and I wanted to try. And again, I traced that all the way back to the shame that lives in me of not being able to please people from way back and wanting to make everyone happy to the detriment of myself. See, we get inside of that, especially in recovery. We come from active addiction where we feel like we're letting everybody down to into recovery and think that we're going to please everyone. And we don't love ourselves enough or have the awareness of what self-care looks like. Because shame is talking big time in new recovery. Shame is talking, it's like a mile a minute in new recovery. It wants you to do everything because at one time you weren't able to do anything for your family. It tells you that self-care is selfishness. It tells you that humility is giving everything you've got and leaving nothing for yourself because you lived so selfishly for so long. And yet, we don't tell any other disease in our existence how selfish they are. We don't tell any other disease. We don't shame any other disease for the progression of their disease. And the more we all heal and speak up about this and our experience is how we eradicate shame around and surrounding addiction and recovery in this world. And all of that then, through our example, through our light, it then, goes out into the world. and we start providing hope for people that maybe we don't always understand that we're doing. But when we are living and walking in our truth, that radiates out. Congratulations, Stephanie Wagner, 9 months today. I have watched this girl fight so hard for this, and I am so utterly proud of you, Stephanie. And Yvonne would be so proud of you. She would just be screaming. She would be so proud of you. So take that to heart. I love you, girl, and thank you. Oh yeah, Andrea. I feel you. I feel you. I feel you. Brandy, yes, I always try to make everyone happy because I don't like it when others get upset. Yeah, that's a trauma response. It's an absolute trauma response. We got to start seeing how amazing the healing process. Go ahead, Brandy, 3 years and 5 months. That's tomorrow, isn't it? No, 2 days from now, Brandy. 2 days. But we have to start really realizing all of the underlying stuff. And so when I use words like subconscious and different things, I know it sounds out there and new agey, but it's really not. That's what all that means. All of that stuff that's swimming in the pond of your soul that's not up here in our, you know, outward reality, our right now, all of that stuff there is driving. It's like when we drive a car, you don't see the engine. You see, the frame, and you see the doors and the hood and all the snazzy pretty stuff. But what's driving that car is the engine that's inside. And what's driving you and me and our successes and our failures and our parenting and our schooling and our recovery and our addiction is the engine that's inside of there. And what's your engine built with? Is it built with trauma? Is it built with complex post-traumatic stress disorder, anxiety, depression? And then go further down into that anxiety and depression. And I want to guarantee you that shame lives in there. And that shame is trying to be incognito and hide itself underneath all of these other things. And it's time we flip the light on. Give shame nowhere to hide because we're looking for it. And we're learning to recognize it in our own lives, in our own realities. When you do that, I'm not guaranteeing you that this is going to be easy. Far from it. But I'm trying to tell you some things that will be built to last. I don't want to give you pretty cliches that sound good in the moment and motivate you for about 30 minutes after this video ends. I want to give you some real meat and bones and foundations of some things that 2 years from now are going to have you standing solidly in a better, more healed place inside of a life that you truly love. Even when things seem rough. Because that's who you are and that is your birthright. Do you know that health, wealth, prosperity, and abundance is your birthright? It is. And shame and guilt and programs have moved us away from that, to think that that's wrong to ask for, that our birthright is suffering, when in fact, your birthright is well-being. And you deserve that. Don't let shame tell you anything different today. Recognize it. Look it square in the face and beat it at its own game. Empathize with shame, empathize with you, and drive it out of your life. You can do it, and yes, 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 you have the power to do so. We all do, Andrea. Manic Jablonski, I love you, man. I love you, man. I love you, man. So, y'all, we got a lot coming up. we're coming up on the season finale of the Recovery Soul Food podcast, season 3, and that's going to be the second weekend in May. Now, the last weekend in April, I've got an amazing guy. So if any of you, and it's really all of us, we suffer from different mental health issues, and we've all probably got diagnoses and all of that stuff. So I've got a man who's coming on. His name is Michael Weitzman, and he does so much stitch comedy that actually the vision came to him when he was in a breakdown in the midst of a mental hospital. And he does this stitch comedy around mental health to bring awareness to, breaking that negative stigma of mental health disorders, and just helps us, laugh and find joy within us. Instead of being shameful about our diagnoses and diseases and stuff, he brings a lightness to it. And I'm really looking forward to bringing him to you guys. I'm really looking forward to that. I've got Tiffany Warner, licensed mental health counselor in Florida, from the famous and amazing show Moments of Clarity with Tiffany, coming back. And the season's going to end with my good friend, beautiful sister in the awakened world, Kareth Foster, who wrote the book You Can Be Perfect or You Can Be Happy. She's going to close out our season this year. Man, I'm just so excited. Andrea, the podcast is available on iHeartRadio, iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, Stitcher, all those fun things. And though I am a little bit behind on getting all the audio uploaded, there's some amazing content there still. You can catch every episode of the Recovery Soul Food podcast on our YouTube channel. All of those episodes are the same episodes we put over there. There's also a couple exclusive videos on our YouTube channel. So if you're not already a subscriber to the Recovery Soul Food YouTube channel, please get over there, like, share, and subscribe that channel. I love you guys so much. Janet McClanahan, I did not get to say good morning to you, so good morning. Love you guys, love you guys, love you guys. And y'all get out of here. Have the most amazing winning Wednesday of your entire life, because you have the power to make that choice. And I'll see y'all Saturday night, 8 p.m. Eastern. Have a great day. Bye.